The following podcast contains spoilers and adult language. And look out for the car!
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. Evil is coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And this week we're going to be covering season 1 finale of the series Three Body Problem. The title of this episode is Wallfacer. I always giggle when I get started because I'm always waiting to see if after you say, and I'm Steve, are you going to do something goofy? Because sometimes you do. And then when you don't, I just giggle to myself. So that's
good
what
to know.
You're like, okay.
All righty then.
There you go. Sorry about that, folks. Sometimes we tangent, If you're a long time listener, you'll know. So we talked last week, and you went first last week for episode 7. So it's my turn to go first on our quick thoughts on the season finale for season 1 of Three Body Problem, Wallfacer. I liked a lot of this episode. I think the only issues that I had were just character ones, like, oh God, Saul, geez, like step up. But I think it was good because going in, I knew that the show was, renewed for a new season, actually 2. But if you didn't know that, I think it was an interesting enough sort of ending. It would still be cliffhangery because, like, hello, what happens when the Santi get there? Hello. But there was enough sort of ambiguity that I don't want to say it could have ended, but it kind of could have ended if it needed to. There were, some things were kind of not wrapped up, but they were starting to get a little closer to wrapped up. And then, there were some answers and some other things, but then there's also, lots of other questions posed, which, we're going to get into. But I think all in all, as a finale, it worked really well. It's cliffhangery without being too like, oh my God, I'm dying for the next episode. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited to see what they accomplish for season 2. And we will, of course, watch it. We will, of course, cover it. But I'm like, I'm not like chomping at the bit to see what the next things are, but I am very, very, very curious about it. Overall, really, really liked it. Good season finale. Lots of good questions answered and questions raised. So how about you? What are your thoughts on Wallfacer?
I agree. I think that ever since episode 5, with the meat grinder on the boat, episode 6 and even episode 7, they were just, they didn't quite have as much action and stuff that happened in that episode. I mean, that was such a jarring, like, I can't believe they just did that kind of a show, that the next 2, you're kind of like, oh, this is kind of, not that, and I thought that this episode it picked the pace back up and kind of brought a lot more of the like the onrushing doom that the earlier episodes had suggested, with this sort of, the Santi fleet is on the way and it's going to wipe us out, right? And they think we're bugs and they're way beyond us and they've sabotaged our science, so we're not going to be able to catch up, and what's going to happen. And so they really brought a lot of that stuff back in there, and I thought revved it up to a really, really, really good level. And like you said, there wasn't like literally the person hanging on the cliff where you're like, I wonder if they're gonna make it. Right. But at the same time, I am certainly like, oh, I definitely want to keep watching this. I definitely want to see where they're gonna go. what is the next thing? And we were just talking about this, before the show started. Is season 2, is it going to pick up right after this episode ends? Is it going to be a year, 5 years? Is it going to be 100 years? And we have a totally different cast. I mean, there's so many ways they could go with it. And since you and I are both have not read the books at all, we really have no ideas of, well, the source material did this, or this was, we don't win. So really it could be anything. And we're just like, yeah, bring it. So I really enjoyed it. I mean, clearly you go back and look at the first 7 episodes, Saul is in this episode more than all the other episodes added up.
You're not wrong, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it is. This was the Saul episode, right? I mean, a little bit with Jin and Raj. Oh, poor Raj. Dude, you are so out. And we got the one scene with Augie, but that was it. I mean, it was the Saul show, the Saul Duran show. So and it was kind of nice to see. And I know you had been kind of saying that over the last couple episodes of, I really hope they do something with Saul, or what are they doing with Saul, or why isn't Saul doing more, and so on. And of course I just had to kind of bite my tongue and be like, yeah, it'd be really cool if they gave him like a crazy job that he got to be in charge of nothing and think of stuff. So
I mean, and is there the perfect character out of those 5 to be the guy that's like, you can't really tell anybody what you're doing because we want to keep it secret. You've got to work on an idea, but it's got to all be in your head, and you've just got to be like in your head. I mean, the episode started with him literally like smoking a bowl, you know what I mean? And just like thinking and pondering. And it's just, it's the perfect character choice for that.
Oh, I want that job. I'm sorry. As long as you don't violate international law, nobody can refuse you anything. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want that job?
Oh, it's so great. But overall, quick thoughts. Yeah, I enjoyed this episode a lot. And again, I think there's nothing wrong with episode 6 and 7. It just was hard to compare to episode 5 with that way that episode worked and everything that happened in it. And this kind of like ramped everything back up. And now you kind of, that's the last shot there with all the cicadas and stuff. And you're like, yeah, man, we got a chance. Come on, and you're ready to run out and start the second half, So I'm definitely looking forward to season 2, and I thought this episode was again, not the best episode of the series, but it was one of the better ones. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was rewatching a little bit of it while I was like sort of getting some work done before we started recording. I do a lot of prep work beforehand, so I'm like doing some prep of this and but I put it on in the background, and there were a handful of funny things that I just totally had forgotten about and had made a note of, and I'm like. Just the Clarence, he kills me. He'd be the one reason I wouldn't want to jump ahead in the timeline by any stretch where he's not a character, because he's just such a good comic relief. Like, wasn't it Sue who said blah blah blah? It's like, I don't know, I'm from Manchester.
Yeah. Know your enemy, right? Isn't that what Sun Tzu said? He's like, not me, dude.
I'm from He says, I'm from Manchester. Yeah. Like, oh God. Anyway, so we're in agreement. Good episode. Not great, but still really good. Good finale, because it, like you were saying, no literal cliffhanger where someone's hanging off a cliff. I mean, maybe someone was pushed off one, but no, she said she was going to shoot her. She wasn't going to push her off the cliff. But anyway.
We don't really know.
We just know she's gone. So good finale, and it sort of lays the groundwork for being excited for where they could take it. So it's great. It's great. Let's get into talking about the episode itself, details. Let's, before we get into our individual moments about stuff, let's remind ourselves what the internet said was the episode description. So let's jump into that, please.
All right. Well, we will do that. And this again is episode 1.8, and the title of it is Wallfacer. And the very sparse description that we've gotten from the internet is a high-level operation upends Saul's life, you think. With emotions and expectations high, the probe launches into space as humanity enters a daunting new era. And that is your episode description. So there you go.
Yeah.
Everything you need to know. If you never watched the episode, if you just read those two things, you are set for season 2.
Yeah, you don't even need us. Like, might as well just stop recording. Basically.
I think we should.
I mean, it sort of covers everything, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All questions answered.
Absolutely not. So the 2 writers for the episode and the director for the episode. Let's chat about that.
Yeah, all right. Well, the director for this week is the same director as last week. So it's a gentleman
Shocking.
Yeah, I know, shocking, right? It's a director named Jeremy Podeswa. I'm not really sure on the pronunciation. But this has kind of been the pattern for this show that directors, do at least 2 episodes, and usually back to back. And that's how they've done it the whole time. And this guy, like I said last week, veteran TV director, Stations 11, Handmaid's Tale, Game of Thrones, which is probably where they met the series creators. He directed episodes of season 2 of True Detective, and he also directed the 1 episode of The Walking Dead from season 4, which was a governor story. So he even has a Walking Dead connection. So how about that? And then our 2 writers last week, if you remember, it was all 3 of the series creators,
Right.
Benoff, Weiss, and Alexander Wu. This week for the season finale, it was just Benoff and DB Weiss. So the two of the 3 showrunners finished off the first season, and I believe that the 3 of them together, I think they wrote at least 4 of the 8 episodes, maybe 5, because there were a couple where it was all 3 of them. There was a couple where it was just Alexander Wu, or at least one that was Alexander Wu, and then there's been a couple that were just David Benoff and DB Weiss. So the vast majority of the episodes written this season, at least more than half, were written by the series creators. Not a surprise. But that was your writers and your director.
So let's talk about poor Nora, who basically
hold on.
just...
I'm going to order an Uber, and I'm hoping it's going to be a self-driving car. So just give me a minute.
Yeah. So about those self-driving cars. Yeah. Nora, we hardly knew ye. Well, that's all right, because Saul hardly knew ye too. So that didn't stop.
I don't know.
Either.
I think Saul got to know her pretty close.
Yeah, just not her name or, anything. That was if that wasn't the perfect, like, regretting the one night stand scene ever. I mean, and she's like, oh my God, I've never had such a long 2 minutes in my life or whatever, waiting for the Uber to get there. And it's just, I know that Saul has every reason to be, like, mentally in a dark place. Will just passed away. They just carved Will's brain out of his head, which were his wishes, which is fine. They also lost their friend Jack not too long before that. There's an alien invasion. Science is broken. Like, there's a lot going on. So he's got a right to be...
And Vera's dead.
Right. And Vera was sort of like his touchstone, his mentor. And so he's got a right to be dark and so forth. But he's kind of a dick in this, like, opening scene, I mean, he's more problematic as the episode goes on, more like, I just want to smack him. But in this scene, he's just like, ugh, my God. He's like everything that's terrible about the one night stand dude the next morning, He's not...
I will try not to take that personally.
Okay. Have you ever just sat there smoking a bowl and basically ignored, like, someone's concerns that were standing right in front of you about, I don't know, the end of the world or anything like that, and just gaslit them and made them feel like their feelings were false and inaccurate?
Well, I mean, I dressed up I mean,
Right.
we didn't, like, anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Anyway, right. I don't want to paint you into a corner. I just think they did a really great job of sort of, Saul has been casual, to say the least, since the first moment we met him. So his behavior isn't surprising, When she's like, you have a lot of one night stands, I was like, yeah, he probably does.
You do.
He's that guy. But I think this is our first time really getting a glimpse at like Saul's pathology, as being, detached from humanity. You know what I mean? He's just like, and I don't know that it's, I don't know that it's a mean thing. It's more like a self-preservation thing, maybe, but I don't know. This whole, the whole opening scene was, and I gotta say, they did a really good job, because when she was hit by the car, I literally, gasped, because it was, and I loved the way the scene was structured, and I love how he realized what her name was in that moment and said Nora out loud. I thought that was really well done. So yeah, Nora, poor Nora.
Poor Nora.
Yeah. How do you feel about Saul, the one night stand champion?
Well, see, I thought I interpreted that scene a little differently. It wasn't so much he was in a dark place. I mean, he is, but what I took out of it was it just sort of, it gave us like just a little bit more glimpse into how like unconcerned he is about all this compared to everyone else. Literally once the "We You Are Bugs" message flashes around the world, like we kind of saw in episode, I want to say episode 6, right, where all the footage of the cops dealing with rioters, and then you have they go into the store and the shelves are bare, right? And so like people are like losing their shirt about this, and are, it's the end of the world, oh my God. And he's just like, what are you guys talking about? It's 400 years from now.
Yeah.
Everybody here is going to be long dead. Not only are you going to be dead, everybody you've ever known is going to be dead for a long time. So he's like, what I took from this is that he's watching CNN, which it was hilarious to see actual CNN anchors in the show playing themselves, right? And they're talking about what this is going on, and he is just so unconcerned, and that's what kind of pisses off Nora, right? That he is not more actively like, oh my God, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, what about your descendants? And he's like, when they're like walking down the street, right, to where the Uber is, he even points out, he's like, hey, 400 years ago, most of my ancestors were in Africa, and I highly doubt any of them spent any time imagining what the world was going to be like for their great grandson 400 years later. You know what I mean? So it's like, so why should I worry? Which is really hilarious when you think of what's going to happen to Saul imminently in this episode, where literally his whole job, the rest of his life is going to be planning for his great grandchildren, or people from that time,
Right.
So that's what I took out of it, more than he's just dark and negative because he's experienced a lot of depressing stuff lately. It's much more, he just is just not bothered by it because it is so not imminent, that he's just like, why are you getting all worried and bent out of shape? Because we're going to live all of our lives and nothing's going to change. Like, it's not like they're showing up tomorrow. So that's what I took out of it.
Yeah. Oh, no. And I agree. I think though that his stance on being on everything being like a far off thing that we don't have to worry about, I think that is a defense mechanism. I think that is That's how I feel. I'm just saying, like, I think that, well, I certainly hope so, that if you tap under the surface, there's more concern there, and I think he's cloaking it in we got nothing to worry about. It's just, it's 400 years away. I don't, it's almost like he's convincing himself. It's okay. I don't have to worry about it right now because of all of these things that I know to be true. I don't plan on having children. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, these things wouldn't be a concern for me or my bloodline. So therefore, I don't want to worry about it now. So but yeah, I totally agree that his stance is very,
it's very chill. He's just like, let's just everybody.
Yes.
What does he say at one point? We should all just go smoke a J and relax.
Right. And he's gonna still do that, except now he's gonna do that and also be thinking up a way to defeat the enemy.
Is he, though?
Well, we won't know because it'll all be in his head.
It seems to me that he very, very vocally, turned down the job.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I also think that the loss of will, not to confuse the language and syntax, I think the loss of will into the great beyond is going to motivate him to get involved somewhat, and it's going to be begrudgingly, but I think that like changed his outlook a little bit.
Okay.
Or and even if it isn't right now, I think, even if it takes a little time, that may change his mind eventually. And he may decide to contribute based on how he feels about Will, So, and I think that may be the case for lots, like maybe that's the reason, Augie comes back or something like that. I think they're all going to use what happened to Will, even if he didn't get jettisoned into space, he still passed away, which is still a tragedy. But I think that all the extra, stuff that happened to him is enough to motivate people to say, you know what, I don't want what he did to be in vain. I want there to be, I want to be involved somehow so that what happened to him wasn't like a big old mistake, even though it kind of was.
Who knew that this show would ultimately just break down into a discussion of free will versus destiny? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So that being said, I mean, the Nora stuff, but the Saul stuff, the cloak and dagger, the traveling, the getting on the plane, I mean, and it all started innocently enough. I mean, he's just in like I'm not going to say the police station, but whatever is, doubling as
wherever Clarence works.
Yeah, wherever. Yes. Wherever Clarence hangs his hat when he's not out doing things. And it all just sort of escalates from, I mean, once he gets the suit, the bulletproof suit, it all kind of escalates from there. It's like, okay, change your clothes. We got to go. Where are we going? I can't tell you. Then it's, getting, escorted to the airport. You got I think there were two images that made me go, if I were Saul, I'd be shitting my pants right now. There are two images. One is when he got out of the SUV on the tarmac, and there were literally just people standing in a ring around the airplane as like security.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Also, I should point out, they were not at an airport. They were like on a road somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, they were in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like they went to Heathrow and he got on a plane.
Yeah. But but them standing around the airplane, and then once they're in the air and he's just like fiddling and he opens up the window shade and is like, yes, fighter jets. Like you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those two images to me, I was like, oh wow, this is intense.
Well, and just the fact that the first couple people that he meets, Clarence and then Kent later on, none of them can explain why he's there, what he's supposed to do, where they're going. It's always, oh, you'll be told in a minute, eventually. The next person will tell you, and then the next person he gets handed off to, oh, the next person will tell you. And so you're right. It's like it keeps getting like bigger and bigger and bigger. Where you're like, what the hell's going on? But also when Clarence tells him that all three of the cars that were in those accidents were all self-driving, and they believe that someone or something hacked into them and turned them into murder death machines. And the only reason that he's still alive is that kid on the skateboard like bumped into him and knocked him over. That's it, So because Saul's like, I'm nobody. Why? What's going on? And they're like, somebody thinks you're somebody.
Yeah.
And so you're right, and it gets real serious real quick there. And I agree. I that was one of my points when he opens up the shade and there are like 3 F-22s. Flying in close formation next to this jet. I'm like, okay, that doesn't happen for everybody.
This escalated really quickly into, yes, fighter jet escorts. It's totally normal.
Absolutely.
Normal.
Absolutely.
And I loved how he doesn't lose his, because he's a sarcastic son of a bitch, but also super smart. And I loved that moment because you said the thing about the autonomous cars, and he said, and Clarence is explaining is like the cars were autonomous, so they were, they didn't have anyone. He's like, I know what autonomous is.
Yeah, I know what that means. I know that word. Yes, I went to Oxford.
I went to near Oxford. But I in those moments when he was saying stuff where he's like, I'm nobody. I can't help myself. It just brings me to True Lies, and I just want to be Bill Paxton and just be like, I'm nobody. I'm Naval Lint. It's a classic.
It's a family car there. Well, I'm not married. It's a chick magnet, dude. Yes.
I love it. Oh God, we could cover that movie. True Lies is such a classic. Anyway, I digress. So the end of the line is I love the moment where they ask him, have you been to the United Nations before? Because they showed the building and I was like, I think that's the United Nations because of all the flags and stuff. And I've never been inside, but I think I drove past once or whatever. And they're like, ever been to the United Nations? And he takes it on he's like, class trip or whatever.
Class
and
trip
they're like,
once.
Yeah. And then they're like, okay, so we're doing this. And he comes in and he's brought into the actual like meeting hall. And then that moment whenever they call his name and he's like, oh God. Oh God.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, he goes up there. So kudos to him that he actually did it. But oof, that was a moment. Although I put in my notes too, like if CCH Pounder told me to do something, if she said to come up on the stage, I would do it because she has unlimited authority. Just as a human, Just
as a human, right?
Yeah.
It was real funny when she popped up, and I think if you go back in one of the episodes where Wade is like talking to all these people at a table that are like clearly, you get the sense that they're in charge and there are people in uniforms and stuff. I want to say she's sitting there. And when I first saw this last year, I remember going, I know her. I recognize her, but then she doesn't say anything in that episode and it's real brief. And then I'm like, oh, maybe it was just someone who kind of looked like her, Right. And then later I'm like, nope, it was her. So,
and what's great is because you recognized her the first time around. I didn't recognize her in that scene. I know what scene you're talking about. But they also list her in the credits as having appeared in 2 episodes.
Okay.
And I was like, this one and what other episode? So now I know what that other episode was. Yeah. So she clearly was there and just didn't have any speaking lines.
Yeah.
But was there.
Yeah, they didn't reveal who she was or what her purpose. It was just she was one of those like superiors for Wade. Like clearly those people Wade reported to, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what did you think of the Wallfacer project when CCH kind of, very eloquently spelled it out?
I think it's very interesting because I think we've had all of our Oxford Five contributing in some way to this whole endeavor, whether consciously or subconsciously. You know what I mean? Like Jack contributed by making them all afraid because he died. You know what I mean? Like they knew that this was like a larger than life kind of conspiracy, and they were all sort of more careful because they knew that they were in danger. You know, and Jin made her contributions, and Will, and whatever. But the different
Will used his brain.
Yeah,
Sorry.
he did. He's check out the brain on Brad there. So they all made different contributions in a different kind of way, like different types of science, different types of engagement levels, like participation levels, as it were. And in Saul's case, now we have to think about, like, this might end up being a war based on thought, because we've already set up the Santi as they don't understand humor, which is why Wenji was able to couch what she said to cloak what she said in a joke, because she knew they wouldn't get it. I still kind of don't get it, but I understand she was trying to impart something in that moment. And I think because they can't read their thoughts. So I think it's very interesting. I was kind of like, what the hell, the first time around, but then second time out through, I was like, okay, this makes more sense, because then it makes this show much more on that scientific level, because you could easily just, like, aliens, like, load up a big, sort of like ship with, galactic marines and send them out there to blow something to high heaven, like, but they're approaching it from a purely scientific level. The staircase project and all these other things were all coming at it from attacking them with science. And I think that this is a way of using their really, really smart brains in a really productive way. I think that I'm very interested to see how they pull this off, though, on the show, if we're going to see anything that happens with it, because are we just going to hear, like, Saul's inner dialogue while he's thinking? And is that compelling television? I don't know. But I like the idea of this as a way to combat the Santee. I like that they're all sort of trying to think outside the box, Like Wade was saying, all of you people are showing me why I can't do these things. I'm going to go find people that will say, okay, we can do these things, So I like it. How about you? What are your thoughts on Wallfacer? I mean, it's out there for sure. But what do you think about it?
Like I said, sign me up. I am ready to begin my duties as a Wallfacer without a problem, because anytime. So how's it coming? Can't say. Thinking, so I might not be the best choice, actually, now that I think about it. But I think, you know what? It's very much like the movie Independence Day to me, in that when you first think of it, you're like, wow, this is really cool. And then once you start to, like, kind of think about it more in detail, it kind of all falls apart. And you're like, wait a minute. How can an Apple virus infect an alien computer? Whatever, and so on. And the reason I say that is I appreciate the idea of they should think stuff up, because the Santi can't read our minds, so they won't be able to see it coming. But then as soon as they, like, try and implement it and, like, build it and construct it and get the people to do it, the Santi are going to know. So what's the point? You know what I mean? It's like I can come up with the greatest battle plan to defeat the Santi fleet, but as soon as I then tell the fleet to get in position to do it, then it's out there and the Santi are everywhere and they're listening, they're going to know. So that was the thing that threw me. I'm like, okay, so theoretically you can come up with all kinds of great ideas that they can't anticipate, but as soon as you try and build something or organize something or train people or whatever, then it's out there and it's on a computer, or it's been verbalized, or it's been written down and so on, and then it's common knowledge for them because of their unbelievable ability to be everywhere and at all times and all places. So I like that conceptually. I just think practically it's foolish, and maybe that's the point. Maybe that's what they're trying to do, is that they want the Sophons to be exclusively watching these three people all the time because they're the Wallfacers, and the idea is that the rest of the planet can kind of do some secret stuff or stuff that they're maybe not fully following up. I don't know. It could be just a big red herring. It could be a MacGuffin of some sort. But the overall concept, I liked it, but then I'm like, it doesn't really work. It doesn't. So yeah. And the three people, I mean, you have like this, Chinese general, right, who has written military books that everybody around the world use when they're teaching military history, and he's won wars and he's won peaces and is this incredible soldier and leader. And then that woman, she's like a Kurdish like resistance fighter who has been fighting ISIS, right?
Yeah.
For years and years and years, and knows everything about guerrilla warfare and all of like what they call it, asymmetrical combat and so on. And then there's Saul.
And Saul is just a deep thinker who likes to sleep with women and then cast them aside.
Yeah. Saul likes to blow weed and go sit on the not beach, because as we know the British suck at beach, but to sit like by the shore and eat Cornish pastry, right? I mean that is his qualifications. Like what he even says, he's a low-level researcher. Yeah, let's give him that job.
Yeah. I don't know. You may be right, because didn't Wade had something else where he was like, where he was asking Jin about, we'll charge up all of the particle accelerators and keep them busy looking at something else while we're working on these things, right? So perhaps that's what the Wallfacers are. Maybe they, like you're right, that could be that they are a distraction for the Sophons, and then they will be working on something else in the background. I don't know. Interesting. It's interesting to think about. I think that in order for it to work, there has to be what you said. There's got to be that next piece, which is, this is great. I can think up a thing, but how do I impart it to someone without spilling the beans, as it were?
Right. Yeah, how do I tell people, okay, you got to build a 400-foot high ladder and get a big 80-gallon or 800-gallon bucket, and we're going to fill it with water and put it on the ladder. And then when the Santi walk by, they're going to trip it. It's going to fall on. I mean, that all requires production and manufacturing. And as soon as all of those specs are built and everything, then they know. So, yeah, that was kind of my thing. So like clearly it's a cool idea. It sounds cool, but I just think practically it's like, yeah, you're not really accomplishing much. But yeah, I still though, I mean, all of the stuff that's going on leading up to him getting that, and he goes into that the main hall of the UN, right, where all the seats are, and he's sitting there, and they're introduced, and she's up on stage and she's talking about Project Wallfacer and all this stuff and the Planetary Defense Council and all this stuff, and then she's like, it's gonna be three people, this dude, that woman, and Saul, and the look on his face is like, what?
Yeah, he is as surprised as we are. He is shooketh.
Oh yes, he is definitely like, you gotta be forking me.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. And then how did you feel about the scene after? So he immediately is like, nope, I'm not going to do it. And then when they're like, Clarence is like, well, at least can I walk with you? It's like, no, man, I gotta go. And I was like, yeah, he's gonna get shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then flash forward, he steps outside and pachoo, he does get shot.
Takes one right in the heart.
Yeah, exactly. And thank God for, the clothing,
Yeah. Well, and remember when they first get to the UN, the guy Kent, who is his liaison to the UN, which, by the way, that guy, amazing performance. I mean, he just has the look and the sound of like a total low-level bureaucrat, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
So he's great. He's great. And he's actually kind of funny in this, too. There's some very funny scenes between Saul and Kent when Saul's trying to say that I'm not a wallflower, a Wallfacer. He's like, of course not, sir.
Yeah. And his moments where his voice is doing the, like the wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
Of course not, sir. We would never say you're a Wallfacer.
No, sir. You did turn it down. Yes, sir. And the whole world knows, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when they first get in there, that guy Kent's like, oh, I have a suit and tie for you to change into, and I kind of guessed at the size, but we should be okay. And Clarence is like, he wears the overalls. And Kent's like looking at him like, it's the UN. It's kind of, you got to wear like fancy, nice clothes to get in, right?
Yeah.
And Clarence is like, I'm in charge of security for him, right? And Kent goes, yeah. And he's like, then he wears what he's wearing. And like, thank God he did that, right?
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah. I also like to, but right before Saul leaves and gets shot, he has a little sit down with the UN Secretary General.
Yes.
And he's. And I'm going to use the word understandably, but that doesn't really sum it up because they screw him over here, that no one would tell him what's going on. And then they spring this and you've won, moment. Right.
Yeah.
And he's just like telling the Secretary General that was a total dick move. And he's like, completely unfair. And I wrote this down because she's like, well, if we had asked, would you have come? And he's like, no, of course not. And then she's like, that's why we didn't ask.
Yep. Yeah. Without question. And here's the thing, though. They know that he's unwilling, but they still brought him anyway. So You're right. It's kind of a dick move.
Well, and again, and this hasn't happened yet, but he keeps asking them, why me? Why did you pick me?
Right.
And they all tap dance around it and don't ever tell him specifically, but clearly they believe that the Santi believe he's a problem.
Right.
The fact that they, there's what does Clarence say? In 48 hours, you've had 2 attempts on your life, right? So clearly, someone out there is convinced that you can hurt them and they're trying to get rid of you. But still, I mean, just, again, just the monumental screw job that this guy, his whole life is over. His old life. The sitting around and blowing weed and, sleeping with random hot Irish girls is over, So, I totally understand and feel his anger and resentment about how this went about. But at the same time, I understand why they didn't tell him, because he would have told them, again, based on that first scene of this episode. He's like, no, why are we worrying about this? He doesn't have that sense of urgency at all. He's just like, whatever, let's just live our lives, man. Let's just all calm down. And, we have plenty of time. And anything that we do today is not going to make a diddly worth of difference 400 years from now. Right. And that's not how they're approaching it. So I can kind of see both sides. But ultimately, to me, he got screwed.
Yeah. Poor guy.
But anyway, so he walks outside and bang, he gets shot.
Yeah, he does.
And then suddenly Clarence is there and, it does the weird thing of, I'm going to unzip your bulletproof vest because, no one will shoot at you again.
And also, it's almost like we're going to unzip your bulletproof vest because we want to prove that it worked. Oh, see, there's no blood. There's no hole there. Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. It's like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's shot. They take him away.
Mm-hmm.
We move on to we've got our staircase project. Is that what it's called? I keep forgetting. Staircase project people. Wade is bringing a bunch of them to watch the launch, as it were, the the launch of Wilbrain into the atmosphere. And he wants Jin to come along, and he's got a space on the plane for her, and she does eventually decide to go.
Well, she comes in to see him and drops off all the seeds.
Right, and he says
I want
no.
you to, yeah, he goes like, I want you to put those in here because, he's going to need something to eat. Because I definitely think Jin is in her let's go to Egypt phase, because clearly in denial about all this, that Will's dead and that he's never coming back. She's convinced, oh no, he's going to be fine. Right. And so, and he does, you're right. He turns it down because he's like, it's too much weight. And she's like, it's like 2 grams. And he's like, yeah, you know what? We're making the capsule as small as possible to make as much speed as we can get so we can get there as soon as possible. Right. So he's like, no. And she's like, fine, I'm leaving. And he's like, no, you're not. And she's like, yeah, I am. And he tells her the only science going on the planet right now is planetary defense stuff. That's it. So if you want any money to do any sciencey stuff, it's going to be here. So you're not leaving. And she's like, I am too, And he's like, well, just so you know, we're going to Cape Canaveral to watch the launch. I'll have a seat for you. Yeah. And she's just like, no. And then she leaves. But you're right. Eventually she gets on the plane anyway.
Yeah. I like the argument he gave her, which was pretty smart. She was just like, I'm going to quit. He's like, no, you're not.
Oh, yeah.
And his point was, he was like, the only science that people are going to be working on for the next 300 to 400 years is going to be defense for the aliens coming in. So if you're looking to work in science, this is going to be your job pretty much.
This is it. Yeah. Yeah. And she's like, you can't make me stay. And he's like, you're right. I can't, but you're not gonna.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere. Why would you leave?
Right.
But she does eventually go. And then it's probably the most awkward relationship moment you could ever see when she's going down. I know. She's going down the aisle on the plane, and there's a couple of members here, and Wade's on one side, and then there's Raj, and he looks up and he sees her, and his bag is in the seat next to him. Mm-hmm. He smiles, he sits up straight, takes the bag and moves it off the chair.
Like, pats the seat.
And she basically is like, she just keeps walking and goes to like a different part of the plane in the back. And
so many bad memories are flooding back into my head right now.
It's a very the seat's taken. Do you want to sit next to me? No, I'd rather eat dirt. I mean, really, we've all been there. But I do feel bad for Raj in that moment, because that was like, and he says it, like, he gets up and talks to her and he's like, so are we done? Like, are we broken up or whatever?
He's like, did you break up with me and forget to tell me?
Yes. But I do feel bad for him in that moment, because emotionally that was a rough thing to go through. But also, give some grace to Jin, who in the last few weeks, she's lost a couple of friends. Mm-hmm. A good friend of hers left her project. Augie left and went to parts unknown. They're not sure. She's got the enormous pressure of, putting together a plan to perhaps save the world. And, she got a few things on her shoulders, so she's not concerned about anything happening in her personal life. And I mean, yes, he should be just a little bit more than just her personal life. I get it. But I feel like she's probably she probably barely found clean clothes that morning. I mean, I'm just saying, she's distracted. She's got a million things going on. Her head is not in the right place.
Neither is Will's. Thank you very much.
No, his head's in the right place. His brain isn't, though. His brain should be in that head, and it's
brainless.
Not at all. Yeah. So I just I like I said in my notes, I feel bad for Raj, but she's got a lot of good reasons to be distracted right now and not want to deal with any of that stuff right now. So I do feel really bad for him, but I also think I understand where Jim was coming from to a degree. It should have been, she should have said something like, this is still cold. She should have been like, I've got so much going on in my head. Is it okay if I sit by myself? Then he probably would have been like, oh, absolutely. But, because he's a boy, he can't figure things out on his own. She's got to tell him. So she just walks away. And really, she should have just written it all out for him and just been like, listen, I'm sorry. I know we should sit and talk and etc. But I do not have the mental capacity to do this right now. So is it okay?
Wow, D. Wow.
What?
I mean, what happened to you? All right. It used to be about the music, man. Now look where you are. No, I think she's well, certainly the pressures of her job are on her, no doubt. But this is a Will show that's going on, and just the fact that when he confronts her and she literally is like, I don't have time to do this right now. I have too much work. And he's like, You're stuck on a plane for like 5 hours. You have time. You know what I mean? Like, when are we ever going to have this? We're going to hash this out, But I mean, she can't even, in that conversation, she can't even come to refer to Will in the past tense. I mean, it's like he's going to be launched, or however every time she would talk about Will, it was always present. And Raj is like, again, kind of giving her like the sledgehammer to the face of like, look, Will is dead. Okay, you have to accept that, and she's like, no, he's not. And it's like, yeah. And she points out his brain is in 150 degrees below zero in a weird state of suspended animation. It's like, no, he's gone, sweetie. Right. Yeah. And even if he's picked up by the Santi and they somehow, put him into a movable toaster or whatever so that he can communicate and stuff, she will never see him again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she's just having a real hard time with that. And I think the fact that he finally told her that he loved her, that his like worst fears
That's true, yeah.
are coming true, right? That when, Saul and everyone's like, you should go tell her. Oh my God, you should tell her. And he's like, no, all that's going to do is mess her up. And they're all like, yeah, well, you know what? This is your chance. And it's like, no, it's going to mess her up. And look what happened. She's messed up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a real powerful scene. And I mean, I feel sorry for Raj because I mean, that dude, yes, he didn't tell her about Panama, but that was like a classified mission and he couldn't, right?
Right.
So I don't hold that against him for like not spilling the beans of like, hey, I just worked with your friend Augie and we strung on these fibers up and we killed like 1,000 people on a boat. Want to hear more about it? No, he didn't because he couldn't. And that was okay. But, she's clearly, done with him and kind of done with relationships in general for a little while. And it's just like, I need to think. So, but yeah, a very, very like uncomfortable, I think is the best way I could describe it. That sequence where, he's just like, what's going on? And she's like, I can't get into it. And then when she gets into it, it ain't good, Raj. You should have stuck with the I can't get into it right now thing. Yeah. But amazing though, right? And understandable on both sides. But yeah, great scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about my favorite sniper in the whole world, because any person who says the name of the podcast in any, I don't care what you did. You could have shot the president. You could have, killed your wife or drowned your children. If you said the name of the podcast in your lines of the show you're on, you're okay by me.
Let that man go. Well, and I hate to burst your bubble, but he doesn't technically say that the name of the podcast. He
Shut up, Steve. Yes, he did. He came very, very close, and
closer than most people. Yes,
it is true. It is true.
Yeah, his line is, "I'm sorry, I didn't aim for your head." And but you're right.
He was just personalizing it. That's all.
I know. I know. But I think starting with the next episode, we should retitle the podcast and call it "Aim for Your Head." So, but yeah, as soon as he did that, I'm like, "Ooh, he said the podcast. He said the podcast."
Oh my God. Yes. It's so exciting when that happens.
It was.
Yeah. And when he did, as soon as he said it, I was like, we're going to have to talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as that line happens.
Yeah. But I mean, what did you think of that guy? Just like how crazy, like true believer guy he was.
Yeah. I'm curious, and I was thinking this later with the Tatiana scene as well. So it's sort of like an overall feeling. So who's in charge now? Because, I mean, are the Sophons just, is Sword Lady just appearing to all of their true believers? Is that just happening? Or is there someone on Earth who's
coordinating all this
stuff? Is there is there someone on a Mike Evans level who's, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good question. My feeling is it's Sword Lady, and they're just communicating with individuals when they need stuff to get done. Right. That feels right to me. I think the whole idea of like the mass group of humans that are all, I'm gonna use air quotes here, part of the plan, that's over for the Santi, right? And that there are just a few individuals now around the planet that when they need something, they can go say, "Hey, Tatiana, drop all your groceries and, come put on this cool helmet, or whatever." And that's how it's going. I don't believe that there's another Mike Evans type person out there that is, like the liaison between the Santi and the disciples. I don't. Well, I mean, I'm guessing you agree. Is that what you're? I'm hearing lots of yeses.
I'm not sold. I still think. I mean, it's still possible. I think it's more probable that it's, especially since they showed it to us. But I just felt like the shooter is just like someone we don't know, we've never seen before. So are they just appearing to all these people who are, and how do they find out which people are like the Santi disciples,
Yeah.
Are they people that were involved before? Did they vet them some other way? Did they use something other than the game to vet them?
Yeah.
Because Tatiana just got the headpiece, which, we'll talk more about, but she just got it. So what was the way that they reached out to people beforehand? Because none of these people were on the boat with Mike.
So they weren't at the meeting with Wen-Ji.
Right.
The founders meeting. So, yeah.
So how, that's something I'd love answered, is how did they reach out to these people? What is because I don't know, like if Sword Lady just appeared on my TV, would I believe her? Would I think I was having a vision? Would I think that she was talking to me, or am I losing my mind? I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like, and that guy, the sniper guy, clearly, like I wrote down that line because Saul, of course, wants to talk to him, right? So they bring him in, and he's, the guy's like, "I'm really sorry," he's like, are you hurt? And he's like, "I'll be okay." And he's like, "I'm really sorry," and he's like, "Sorry, you tried to kill me." And he's like, "Yeah, if I would have known you were wearing a vest, I would have aimed for your head." That's the line. And he's basically apologizing that he injured him. And because he's like, "Look, if I would have done my job correctly, you'd be dead and you wouldn't be feeling any pain." That's what he's sorry about, right? Which is scary. But then Saul's, eventually is like, what the hell's wrong with you? And he says, "I've gone to be a soldier in the army of the Lord." And I mean, again, it just, and he says it, and the whole time the guy is just calm and speaking very rationally and his inside voice, right? I mean, he's not like foaming at the mouth and, doing his best Charles Manson impression. I mean, he's very normal looking and sounding.
Yeah. And I would even say like to a creepy degree, he's calm, he's composed. He's not, like you're saying, he's not like foaming at the mouth or anything like that. It's, he's very like
rational.
He's almost unaffected. Like he has like no affect on him. So he's so unremarkable in a lot of ways too. He's just an average white dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, I'm curious to see how they were reached out to.
Yeah. It's almost like you get the sense that this is a guy that, became disillusioned with the system, with religion, with whatever. The Santi somehow, because again, they're everywhere and all the time, every place, and they're monitoring everything, every communication, every email, everything that's on your computer, on my computer, and everyone else's computer. And oh my God, if they ever see my browser history, they will turn around and leave. They'll be like, yeah, forget this Earth place. It's too creepy. You
think people lying was going to be
yeah. Oh no. Yeah.
That's not going to be the shocking thing.
That's right. How many stepsister fantasies can one person have? I don't know. What's the high score? Anyway, but I mean, just the fact that they're able to do that and they're able to like find like the perfect candidates to recruit because they're lost. That they desperately want something to believe in, and the Santi, as far away as they are, but they're real, and that can work. But what I want to talk about when we get there is how did they build that new headset for Tatiana?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions about that.
So I mean, again, maybe there is an organized human footprints still that are on Team Santi, because that requires manufacturing, that requires a lot of advanced tech to build that headset, right? So
and it also involves like someone had to like bring it to her,
right? Absolutely.
Like I get that, like Sword Lady appearing to like, and they could easily have like Sword Lady appear and be talking to like, say, 1 million people all at once. Like they have that ability, that technology. I accept that. So it's not like she's just traveling around going one by one and talking to all the true believers. So there's that, but I don't think she's like an image. She can't.
She's a hologram. She can't. She can't manipulate anything. She can't. Yeah.
So how did that even happen?
Right. So again, lots of like
questions, things that make you go Yeah. All right. So so we're talking about the shooter. We're talking about the sniper. Not to get off track. But I guess the headset thing was the very next scene. So we get these two true believer scenes like right back to back with each other. This one true believer who did what he was told, but is now gonna pay the price because it didn't work. But Tatiana, who she did what she was told and it did work, and she's being, I guess, rewarded with the headset.
I don't know. We'll have to see, right?
And will we see, though? Will we see what game she played? Because she put it on, and it's the first time that someone's put it on where they didn't go right to, like, that image of, like, the eyes.
Yeah.
Reflecting and then going away.
What I also like is when she, just to set it up, she comes back to her camper in the woods thing, right, that she has, and she's got a couple bags of groceries, and as she gets close, she realizes the front door, or the door to the camper, is like slightly ajar. And yes, I know a door is not ajar, but still. And so she draws a gun, goes in, like all ready to, take out whoever's in there, and sitting like on her table is one of those white kind of weird shaped boxes that the headsets are in, and it has her name on it, right?
Yeah.
And she opens it up, and the headset's in there, and there's a little white card, and it says on the card, if one of us survives, we all survive. And so I'm like, well, what is that? How does that work? And then she puts it on, and you're right. Instead of going into the game, what we get is they do this really cool tracking shot where they back up out of the inside of the camper through the window and pull away, and we see her, and she's just got it on, and she kind of has her mouth open, and clearly is like going the whole, what is this experience? And yet we're pulling farther and farther away, and so they're the showrunners, I guess, wanted to keep that secret, keep that private for now. But I'm right there with you. I wanted to know. I mean, I'm hoping she was playing some sort of like a virtual Donkey Kong. That would be amazing, but we'll have to see.
The thing that's interesting is that if it has any roots in, if it's the same game that was being played before, or if it's got similarities to the games that were played before, they tailored those games for each person to be something that would resonate with them. And so if they do that with Tatiana, like, is she going to go back to the days of like Jesus being put on the cross? Like, are we going that route of like religion? Because they've been very clear that they call the Santi my Lord, but they're not looking at it from a religious perspective. They use that sort of naming mechanism, but like that's it. So I'm curious, what would Tatiana's, I don't want to say ideal world, but what's something that would resonate with her that they could put in there, which I think is probably the reason why we didn't get an image of it.
Maybe
we won't see that until later, because they didn't want to let you know what is something, because now we know what the reasoning is, why those, why Jack's stuff was different from Jin's, is because when Jin was by herself, it was something that was more tailored to her. So anyway, I have questions, like you said. Who built it? How did it get there? Who delivered it?
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I mean, if Wang Ji was still alive, I would say she was involved, but we know she's not.
That's right.
So
that's right. Yeah, and also they did confirm it that the cop was also killed.
Yes.
So so
in that first scene with Saul, he's talking about, you've gone through a lot, and you lost your friend, and I know about Jack, and blah blah blah. And then he's like, and Wang Ji, what did Wang Ji, he wanted to know what they said, because they
talk
like,
about
what did you talk about in the cemetery? And he's like, what? He's like, you've been following me?
Yeah. And then he goes, he says, she goes to China, and 3 days later she's murdered along with one of my men, or whatever he said.
Yeah. One of my guys is gone too. And Saul's like, oh, she's dead, or whatever. So we do, like you said, we do get the confirmation of it. If we didn't get that confirmation at the beginning, I probably would have been like, Wang Ji still around? I mean, we know Mike Evans isn't, because he was sliced and diced and spread onto a piece of toast or something.
A big Ritz cracker. Yes.
And it's funny because you called it the meat grinder, but I really, really always think about
cheese grater.
No, I was going to say an egg slicer.
Oh, egg slicer. Yeah. Okay.
Slicer has like those thin, like piano wire things or whatever that just go right through.
Do you remember? Did you ever have a cheese slicer, which is like
like a single one of those? Yeah,
a thing with the wheel, and it has the wire, and you would kind of put it on a brick of cheese, and you'd pull it across, and it would cut off a thin layer of cheese. That's what I always think of, because that's kind of what it is. To me, it's like those are like 100 of those things just pulling through that. But oh god, don't get me started on that again.
Yeah, cheese humans. Anyway, okay, so Tatiana scene, we have questions.
Yes.
So
the launch.
I was so tense during the launch because I was just waiting for something to go wrong. and it did.
Mm-hmm.
But not in the way I was expecting. Like I was waiting for something to go wrong, but I was waiting for like one of the explosions to be timed incorrectly, or you know what I mean? And then it like exploded. It got them off course or something. I don't know what I expected to see, but that it was something so small like that, like just the connection for one of the things for the sails. It was sad. I immediately, as soon as it snapped off, again. So twice in one episode, and it was true. Like I was very like so drawn in, and was so like on the edge of my seat, and wanting it to succeed so badly. And I gotta tell you, I wanted it to succeed. Not even so much about like saving the human race. I really just wanted Will to make it to the Santee. You know what I mean? So that's and when it didn't, and when it broke, I'm oh my god. It's so disheartening. And they weren't that far into it, right? It was only about three or four explosions.
The third explosion,
yeah.
And the thing, the metal thing that was holding that one cable came loose.
Yeah.
And that threw the sail off, so the sail wasn't in the way it was supposed to be deployed, and then that went off course, and then that was it, and it was over. But I mean, you know, it starts out and it's very exciting and it seems to be working, and you're like, okay, this is going good, and then as soon as they showed that and that piece breaks away, literally, I'm sure everybody who's watching is like, oh no, you know,
yeah.
But I mean, think about that. Everything about that mission was experimental.
Absolutely.
You know, like NASA and the space program and stuff, you know, they like test stuff over and over and over and over and over again before they ever, you know, put people on board, right? Because they want to work out all the kinks and the bugs and what's going to happen when, you know, the theory meets reality and so on. And this time around, they don't have time for that. You know, what did that woman say? Let's have what's a couple decades to, you know, experiment.
Yes.
And Wade's like, no, we're going next week. Yeah. You know, so I mean, clearly everything about this is never been tried, only been written up on a chalkboard or a whiteboard. The math works, so they know that theoretically it should work, but you know, obviously they didn't account for the stress that those pylons that hold those cables are going to experience from the force of those nuclear blasts, you know, enough, and it broke again, and that's why you test. I mean, that's why you do that, and they just didn't. So I let me tell you this way: when I first watched it, I wasn't surprised that something went awry.
No, not at all,
because the odds were so against it going perfectly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But still, yeah, you know, when you know, how about the scene where Saul decides that he wants to go to the launch, right?
Right.
So they fly him out there, and so he and Clarence show up, and there's a scene where Jin sees him come in, and she walks right past Raj. and doesn't even slow down, and Raj is just like, damn it, you know.
It's like, man, I can't win.
Oh no, not at all, right? And then Raj even comes up to them at one point and shakes his hand, and you know, hey, congratulations on Wallfacer and all that, and Jin like immediately goes to Saul and says, let's go outside and talk, and leaves Raj behind again. I mean, it's just, she is just not having anything to do with him now.
Yeah. It's funny too. I was gonna say, like, I was not surprised that something failed because, like you're saying, all of the experimental nature of the actual probe. But I feel really bad that it's the sail that broke. Yeah. Because I feel like Augie is going to beat herself up over that. I think her reaction when she finds out, even if it has, like, you know, she couldn't be helped. Like if there was nothing she could have done or blah, 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 you know what I mean? Like maybe they did test it and they weren't expecting, maybe it turned out one of the explosions was a little closer than it should have been and they didn't account, whatever it is. Even if it's not her fault, ultimately, I think she's going to be absolutely, like, she's going to be devastated when she finds out that it's the sale that failed. And there's so many things that could have failed. Like you were saying, there's so many elements to this that could have failed. And when it got out and the sale was there, I just was like, oh, like it didn't look the way I was expecting it to. Like in my head, I had it. I don't know why, but I had the sail kind of in the back end, sort of, so that it could take the brunt of the. I pictured it sort of like as a cup on the back, like, and so that like it would take the shockwave of the bomb. And it would go into the sail and that would like push it along as opposed to pulling. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know why I pictured it that way.
Well, and also could remember that the warheads like go through that little opening.
Yeah.
So the sail passes in front of the warhead and then the detonation happens, which the big question I had was like, how is Will not like a million times radioactive now? Because he's like literally being pulled through, nuclear detonations that would seemingly, and also how are those cables not getting vaporized, by this nuclear blast? And so there's a lot of, I'm like, that it looks cool. I agree, but it is kind of a weird setup where it almost looks like a parachute.
Right.
And instead of slowing your descent, it's actually, like you said, it's like a tractor. It's pulling the capsule with Will's brain along, rather than like you said, you would think it would be safer for Will and for the computers and stuff on the capsule that are keeping him alive if it would be deployed behind the capsule and it would kind of shield him from some of the radiation from here. I don't know. What did Jin say at one point? It was like they have to thread a needle like 300 times in order for this mission to work, or something. So yeah, it's
at minimum.
Yeah. So
yeah, and You have a really great note there where, it's a good question about Wade and Jin for their scene, because as soon as it happens, and they really take it all in, he swings by her and he whispers, and you pose the question, what do we think he whispered to her?
Yeah.
So what do you think? You pose
no.
Question.
I ladies first. I want to hear what you have to say.
I honestly think that he is doing a whole like, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. Because if you think about it, I mean, it's sad that Will is in there, but if they do it again, like there's still 297 nuclear warheads out there that are waiting to be used. You add 3 to the front and you can do it again.
You can
really
try
quickly.
it again. Yeah.
So I think he's not a like, go get him, Tiger, like that kind of like leader. That's just not who he is. But I think he knows that he needs Jin to stay focused for the next one. And I think he said something to make her feel like, we'll do this. We will succeed. And it'll work next time. We're going to learn from this and it's going to work next time. I that's what I think. I think he said something along those lines. Not so much encouraging, because I don't think he dabbles in that lane of encouragement, but is as encouraging as he can be. I mean, it worked. It was the sale is the part that failed. The science checked out. The science worked.
Yeah.
It was doing what it was supposed to do, because like they were talking about the acceleration and how it was going faster and faster with each successive explosion. So she was right. and it's just the design, which she had nothing to do with. She designed some of it, I'm sure, and helped, but
there were other experts that did all that, right?
She came up with the math, and the math checked out. The math worked. So yeah, that's what I think that he was saying.
Yeah, see, that was kind of what I was going to say. That my difference, the thing I would change would be that he said it in a very like smart-assy kind of way, because that's Wade, right?
Right, that's how he rolls.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, and you're right. I don't think it was any sort of trying to like empathize with her. I think it was much more of like, all right, so that one didn't work. Let's start with the next one.
Yeah.
And it sucks about Will, but you know what? We got bigger fish to fry, and now we have data, and we can look at what went well and build on that, and we can look at what didn't go well, and we can correct it. And yeah, it's just there's no what was the title of last week's episode? Only advance.
Yes, which is exactly what he would say. Yeah.
Yes, it's just saying there's no going back. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep moving. And like you just pointed out, most of the infrastructure for the mission is still out there waiting to be used.
Yep.
So it won't take much to reset that. And now this will be, capsule, 2.0, which hopefully will correct the defects of what went wrong this time. And then they'll launch it, and maybe it'll go 20 warheads before something goes wrong. And then they'll come back and they'll study that data, and they'll build a 3.0, and it'll try, and eventually they'll, hopefully they will solve enough problems that it'll work. And you're right. But I just think it's real interesting. Second time in this episode, we're not privy to some moment that one of the characters is having, right? First it's Tatiana in the game, and now, Wade and is clearly saying something to her, right? And yet we are not shown what it is. And I thought that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, it is. Definitely.
Oh, and also we should point out that Wade did put the seeds into the capsule. He said corn, wheat, and chili peppers because he heard that Will likes spicy food.
I guarantee that, considering how uncouth he is with stuff, he probably in the moment was like, we learned everything we needed to for mission number 2. Next time we'll succeed. And the next time I won't put any here fucking seeds in.
That's right. No more seeds, lady.
Yeah. Even though that had nothing to do with it, but still.
Hey, maybe it did. Maybe that extra bit of weight caused enough drag on that one cable that it snapped that pylon. Who knows?
Yeah, we won't know.
Who knows?
That's a season 2 topic.
Also, I just wanted to, I know it's not on there, but before they go to look at all the cicadas, Jin and Saul are like at like some like motel pool, and they're drinking this bottle of rum and just, kind of wallowing in their despair and sadness. Yep. And Clarence comes in and he's like, why all the sad faces? And I think Saul's like, despair is a normal emotion to face when you're experiencing really difficult times. So, back off. And Clarence points out like all of the things that went well during that day. And he's like, look, you guys, you had something that the fastest man-made object ever.
Right.
And I don't know if you saw it, but before it went bad, the capsule was going 80 kilometers a second.
Yep.
And just to put that in perspective, that's just a tad under 3,000 miles a second.
Yep.
I mean, that thing, what was Saul's comment? Will's flying now.
Yeah.
I mean, so, they leaped ahead technology and knowledge and research wise on propulsion and space capsule design. I mean, so many sciences jumped multiple generations in one moment that would have taken decades otherwise. I mean, so there was, and that's what Clarence is pointing out. That's like, look, I know you feel bad about your friend, but this is not a failure, because we learned so much. Right.
It's akin to how they categorized, I've seen the movie probably 40 times, but the Apollo 13 movie at the end, Tom Hanks is narrating, and he says, our mission was dubbed a successful failure. So it's sort of the same idea where it's like, you know, the actual like mission failed, but the science that they learned to do the mission, like you said, jumped them forward like a generation.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
All the stuff they learned about what went wrong on Apollo 13, they used to make sure it didn't happen again and make all the stuff that went after it better. Yeah, and that's what's going to happen here. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, but before we get to that scene, though, I believe we had Wade on the jet, right?
Yeah,
was the bug scene before that? I can't remember what the order was. Let's just do the bug scene because we're already on it. So
yeah. So Clarence wants to make them, you know, he wants to prove a point to them. You know, told them all the stuff about like your science was amazing and blah blah blah, and they're still wallowing. And he's like, "Come with me." So he makes them come with him, and he drives them out to like the Everglades somewhere, and they're. Meanwhile, in the background of, you know, the last couple of episodes, there's been like the number one story on the news, you know, with a bullet, is obviously we're being invaded by aliens. But the number two story has been the emergence of cicadas.
Yeah.
And and living in Illinois, which has a high cicada population when the time comes. We understand. So that's been in the background of like news reports for the last few episodes.
Yes, it has.
And then Clarence brings them out to an area that is just, you know, there's tons of cicadas. They're flying through the air. They're all over the place. Yeah. It's definitely a big, like a hot spot, as it were. And he literally takes his bottle of rum and he pours one out for them, but he makes this really great, this great point about how the bugs they persevered, and how, you know, they crawl down into the ground and they wait, and then they come out, and it doesn't matter. Like, you know, we spray them, we do things with them, and they just keep coming back. They are persistent.
Yeah.
And so
you can't kill them.
Yeah. So he does a good job of relating, and it's great because the visual of all the cicadas flying around, you know, they were all called bugs by the Santis, and it's like, okay, but we're going to be like these bugs. Yeah. We're going to persevere, and you know, we may dig ourselves into the sand for a little while, but we're going to emerge. Yeah. Eventually. We will emerge, and we're stronger as a big group like this. So it just, the visual of all the cicadas flying around, it was kind of like uplifting, and it leaves the episode on a sort of positive end. I'm pretty sure it's the closing scene, right? Is the cicadas?
I
can't remember if that's the closing scene or if the Wade thing is the closing scene.
I think it is, because the very last bit, you know, you're right. He does that whole speech about, you know, people have been trying to exterminate bugs forever. Yeah. And they've, you know, like you said, they've sprayed stuff in the air, poured stuff in the water, you know, we swat them, step on them, you know, smack them. And it just, he's pointing out, it's for you can't get rid of them, that they are, you know, you can't exterminate them all, and that's going to be our strength. And then he says, come on, we got a lot of work to do. And they, you know, kind of I think that is the last scene. Yeah. So the Wade thing must have happened before it. But again, it like you said, he's trying to pull them out of their kind of despair and be like, look, it's not a perfect day, and it didn't go the way we hoped, but it's not the worst day. And we are much stronger than you guys are giving us credit for.
Right. More than you're thinking of right now. You need some examples of it. I mean, they have been a little beat down lately because of all of their circumstances personally, and also what's going on in the world. And I think Clarence gets that, but also realizes that they got to suck it up a little, and they got to realize that it's not over and out yet. Like they still have,
there's still hope.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And
It's
considering
always
how
darkest before the dawn.
right, and considering what a negative Nelly he's been since day one anyway, it's great that he is the one who's like trying to be like the
The rah-rah.
inspirational one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 By the way, I did like it when he comes into mission control and Wade's there, and Wade says something like, your job for the rest of your life is going to be protecting Saul. He's like, are you okay with it? And Clarence goes, do I have any choice in the matter? And Wade's like, no. And he's like, then I'm okay with it.
He's just so dry. He's just such a great character. I hope that
Yeah.
there's more of him.
Me too. Me too.
After I put down my note about the bug scene, I put that can he just be in all the storylines moving forward? I mean, now that the Oxford Five have sort of like they all know who Clarence is now. It's like, well, Clarence is going to be connected to Saul, so we're going to see him all the time, and it's like, well, will Saul stay with Jin to do more research? And like, I just hope like Clarence is like, I want him there. He's like the everyman, the sarcastic everyman, and I want him in every scene. So
yeah, me too. He's great. He's really
great.
great.
All right, so let's talk the Wade scene. So Wade gets he gets visited.
He's like flying back on the jet, but he's all by himself.
Yeah.
And and like the lights flicker and the TV or this is like the jet has like a map and it like has the route of the plane and the spot on where the plane is, so you can like in the passenger cabin you can like follow along. Oh, we're halfway or whatever. That like flickers, right? And he's like looking around like, well, that's weird. And then the Santi woman appears on that screen.
Right.
And starts talking to him. And the first thing she says is, it's unfortunate that, your mission didn't work out today because we really wanted to meet Mr. Downing, which was kind of creepy.
Yeah. I was like, well, yeah, they are paying attention, clearly.
Oh, they are. Yeah. And then he even says that. He's like, if you're here, that must mean I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
And it's very defiant. And then like she like does something and like the plane, like all the power goes out of the plane and it starts losing altitude.
Yeah. I was like, should you be sassy right now? I'm not sure that was the proper choice, but
right. Yeah. And so then, it comes back on and I wrote this line down and she wishes him good luck on his hibernation plans.
Yes.
Which was hilarious. And then she's like, because we're looking forward to meeting you. And then she says, and this is kind of chilling, she goes, you are part of our plan. Because she says, like, you're a great leader and, you are, doing a good job, basically. And like basically saying that, we recognize the qualities that you have and they're good. And we're going to use you when we get there. I mean, and he's just like, huh?
Yeah, he's taken for a loop there. And then not only that, but she messes with the plane so that it's like everything goes out and it starts to crash, basically. It starts to descend. And he's in that moment where it's like, I just think there's this like, I just wrote down that it's like Wade discovers like he's not in charge.
Yeah.
He can be as smart as possible and as like smart assy as possible. And no matter how much science he throws at it, he's still not in charge. So, yeah. That was a humbling moment for him.
Yeah. And it's like the second big one with her, because the first one I think is Tatiana getting the helmet with that note. That, if one of us survives, we all survive. And then, her just kind of like gently reminding Wade that the Santi are way ahead. They're like 100 moves ahead of him, and even if it can kind of pat himself on the back of like, well, if you're spending this much attention on me with one of your Sophons, I must be doing something that concerns you. But she then points out, no, it really doesn't.
Yeah, where you're again, he is treated like a bug in that
Yeah.
moment. You are just a pest right now,
Yeah.
you know, but he shows promise because they like his, you know, his spark and his ingenuity, but that's, you know,
But just when she says, you are part of our plan, it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And Liam Cunningham does a really good job in that scene. And he's just like, because he's been, you know, Mr. Confidence since moment one we've met him. This is the first time you've seen him in a vulnerable moment, and he's vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, remember when she's kind of proving her point, he sees the countdown clock.
That's right. That's right.
And then he has that like standard horror movie thing where he like looks to the seat next to him and he sees himself and his eyes have been like scooped out with the melon baller. And he's like, you know, I mean, so yeah, she freaks him out there a little, just kind of like reminding him that, look, you know what, if we wanted to get rid of you, there are infinite number of ways that we could get rid of you.
Yes.
So yeah. And then ends it by saying, look, we could kill you if we want to, but we don't, because you're part of our thing. There's a place for you when we get here. And he's just like, no, you know, I want to kill all of you, you know, and they're like, I mean, so yeah, it was a very chilling little moment there. And again, right, they don't end the episode, they don't end the season on that. Instead, we get kind of the more uplifting, you know, look at the cicadas sequence to kind of make us feel a little bit better about ourselves. Right. But yeah, that was a very, very kind of a creepy little moment there. So,
but it makes me think too, like, if they're going to succeed at all, again, it has to be something that is, you know, there may be something to this plan with like Saul, with the Wallfacer thing, because, you know, they're being watched, they're being listened to, they're observing them doing all sorts of things. So they're going to have to come up with different ways to fight them, you know? So Saul's got to figure it out, man. He's got some shit to do in season 2.
He's got some shit to do, yeah.
So speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about, so Netflix did renew it for not just a season 2, but a season 3 as well.
Yep.
And I have read recently that production is expected to start this year, at some point in 2025, and probably wrap up by the end of the year. And you know, the estimate is that considering the production schedule, post-production processes, and stuff like that, we're looking at sometime in early 2026 if filming happens when they wanted to. Seeing it, so somewhere in the first half of 2026, so about a year from now, maybe. That seems a little ambitious, personally. So I'm thinking maybe sometime before the end of 2026, maybe, is when we might see season 2. But I'm hopeful for sooner. So yeah, I didn't even think about the flash forward to, like, you know, a new cast in like hundreds of years. Like, that's just like, thank you for bringing that up, because now my brain is like exploding thinking about that. So, you know, I had other things in my brain of like, oh, I want to see, like, do they try the mission again? And da-da-da. I was thinking, like, do you see some other alien species, like some other benevolent species say, oh, what's that thing flying past our planet?
Oh,
let's go grab it.
Yeah,
oh, look,
maybe.
There's a brain in there. What can we do with this? So,
ooh,
like,
and seeds.
Yeah. I've always wanted to grow corn. Damn.
They'll call it maize.
Yeah, of course they will. I was curious if they would show some type of, you know, the second coming of Will, and he's like on some planet somewhere, who knows? And is he even conscious? Like, does he understand what happened and who he is now? You know, do we meet like the true Santee? Not that representation that they throw on the TV, but will we see them and what they're all about? I don't know. What else? What are you looking for a season 2?
Well, you know, like way back when we did season 1, we kind of covered this a little bit. because I had mentioned that they had renewed for the 2 seasons, and one of the things that I'd found out back then was that basically this first season, the guy who wrote this wrote 3 books, and this first season, from what I read, pretty much was the first book.
Okay.
And so now season 2, obviously going to be second book, season 3, third book. The question is that since neither of us are familiar with these books, haven't read them, we don't know how linear are they in telling this story. You know, is it going to be like the Lord of the Rings, where, you know, when the Fellowship book ends, when the Two Towers starts, it pretty much starts right where the Fellowship ends, right?
Yeah, picks up right where you left off. Yeah.
You know, or is it going to be like we just said, where book 2 is 200 years later?
Yeah.
And it's a whole new set of characters. And it's, you know, well, I mean, Wade obviously will be unfrozen to go watch Wimbledon and so on. But you know what I mean? Everybody else is going to be brand new people. Right. And we're halfway. We've reached the Santi are 200 years away. Where has Earth gotten in its science and its efforts and all that? I don't know. I mean, I really like this cast, like you just said. You know, I love you know, the character of Clarence, and Wade's great, and, you know, Augie's great. I mean, all of them, I really enjoy them. They're good actors. They work good together. They're funny and they're serious and they're sad at the right times. And so I would have no problem continuing on with the here and now and with these people, but I kind of have a feeling that we're not. That we're going to ultimately, they're going, you know, at some point you would think the fleet's going to show up in one of these seasons, right? Wouldn't you think? Yeah. So, and the only way that's going to happen is if all the people that we're seeing now are long gone. So, except for Wade, who is obviously going to be going to Wimbledon. So that's my hope, is that we get more of this cast, but my kind of like expectation is that it will be new folks. Maybe they keep some of these people and they're not playing, like Augie will be back, Elsa Gonzalez will be back, but she's not playing Augie, she's playing Augie's, you know, great granddaughter or something, you know what I mean? Something weird like that. Yeah. But anyway, that's kind of my thought on it. That you know, we probably will get the story to continue, but it won't be with these folks. And I agree. I think the earliest that we could really hope, we could hope for, you know, about a year from now, but I'm guessing like you that it'll probably be later. It'll be in either the summer or maybe the fall of 2026. Yeah.
Agreed.
So, and I just want to take this moment to say that I am extremely happy that I no longer have to use overalls when referring to this show. And so I just want to point out, people, that yes, that means I'm recording this podcast and I'm not wearing any pants. So if we were doing a video podcast, it would be a lot more scary.
I love it. Actually, so speaking of that, since you brought up overalls, what would you say was the one thing that I was like, I wonder if this will happen or that'll happen? What was the one thing was the hardest thing to not reveal?
To not reveal?
Or either not reveal or to like have to play along with. Like maybe I had some stupid outlook or whatever where you're like, yeah, that could happen and it's not going to happen at all or whatever. Like what was your one thing where you were biting your tongue the hardest?
See, wow, there's so many Diana stupid outlooks for me to think about. No, I'm kidding. No, actually, I think the one that jumps to mind is Will. You guessed correctly pretty quickly that Will was going to be the passenger. Yeah, and at first I was really excited because you texted me and you thought it might be Raj. Because, you know, he's a Navy guy, right? He would volunteer and, you know, like all the astronauts were guys in the military, you know, back in the 60s and whatnot. So that and so I was at first real excited. I'm like, ooh, this will catch her by surprise. And then like literally the next day you're like, I think it's Will.
Yeah.
And so that I think was the one I really tried to be like, yeah, it could be, maybe. But, you know, a lot of possibilities. you know.
Yeah.
And then I think too, you kept going back to, well, Saul's got to do something on this show, right? And it was really tough.
He did.
He did, but not till the very end. So it was very
know.
difficult for me to be, I didn't want to be like, well, just wait, because then that would tip you off. So I just kind of had to go, yeah, they don't really use him that much, do they? Because, the first, like I said, if you add up the amount of screen time that guy had in episode 8, I'm sure it's more than all the screen time of the other 7 episodes.
Probably.
So yeah, I mean, he was number 1 on the call sheet for that whole episode, without a doubt. So, but I think it was Will. I think that was the thing that was really difficult to not be like, yeah, you're right, and just kind of spill the beans. And I mean, obviously the cheese grating of the ship, I could not wait for you to experience that and get your like, holy crap take, because that's the reaction everyone has when they see that scene, and you're like, oh my God, because not only do they actually do it in the story, you get to watch them do it. I mean, it's just so that was really difficult. I was really hoping you wouldn't get spoiled on it from someone else, and it was really tough for me to be like, oh my God, there's a moment in this show that is just going to blow your mind. I mean, it was so that was a little bit difficult just to kind of bite my tongue on, but it was fun to get your takes on stuff and just be like, oh yeah, that's a cool idea. Not going to do anything with that.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, not going to happen. But yeah, it was.
I love it.
Oh. But so anyway, overall, yes, I think we're both fans, right? Is that I'm safe in saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm really happy too. I feel like even though we think like the finale, it didn't have like a lot of the. I mean, once you have the meat slicing episode, I mean, it's hard to really top that.
Yeah.
So they had a hard time. They were climbing a hill for, almost like a mountain to try and match that. But I think they really did a good job of sticking the landing, though. So enough so that we're all very, very, very interested in seeing a season 2. Mostly my curiosity to see where they go and what the next thing is going to be. So it's just such an interesting premise.
Yeah,
we have aliens that are coming. You have 400 years to prepare. Go.
Yeah. How do you make that tense?
Right.
Yeah. So let me ask you now that you've seen all 8 episodes, and let's just like remove episode 5 from this discussion, because it is one of the most unforgettable episodes of TV ever, I think.
Okay.
Because of the ship grading sequence. What would you say is your favorite episode of the 8? Or maybe second favorite, because I would think that you would automatically be drawn to 5. So let's just not even make that an option.
Oh, yeah. No. I really liked the episode. I really liked when the what's it called? When the clock stopped ticking for Augie. I liked that episode.
Okay.
That's mostly
episode
because
4.
I was not convinced that was going to happen. I thought they were going to let that clock run out. She was going to die or kill herself or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just did not know how that was going to work. So that was really, that was an interesting episode. I honestly, the one thing that was hard was I'm not a big video game person, so all of the stuff where they were in the games was not as interesting to me. But yeah, I really did enjoy that episode where the numbers stop for her.
Okay.
I thought that was really well done.
All right, it got some great Clarence and Augie moments in that. Without it, that's the one with the he rolls the cigarette in the lab and then he slides the flask out towards her.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I thought that was great.
Yeah,
so.
I agree. That was a really good one. I think that for me the one that comes to mind is, I want to say it's episode 3, and just for the ending when they kill Jack.
Yeah.
Because that's just jarring, and you clearly don't think that's going to happen. And,
right.
And whenever TV can surprise me like that, I'm always like, oh wow. And and I'm not trying to break my arm, pat myself on the back here. And yes, bragging camp is going great, but TV is very formulaic, at least American TV. And it's very rare that an American show will do something where I'm like, wow, I didn't see that coming. I might not. And it's not that I know what's going to happen. It's just stuff happens, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And the fact that they just axed that guy 3 episodes into a new show was surprising to me. And So I would think that one it would be 3, or if not 3, it would be 4. I think those 2, besides obviously the cheese grating episode 5. So yeah. So cool.
Yeah. All right, meat slicer it is. Anything else? Any other final thoughts on this episode or the season as a whole before we take a break?
The only thought that I've had for a while here rewatching it is this whole idea about the Santi can't lie, right? That they've made up, and so they present that, but then the thing that is bothering me is in the video game, the Santi don't look the way they really look. They've changed their appearance, and that to me suggests they at least understand the concept of being deceitful.
Right.
And it's always explained away as, well, it'll be easier for the humans to see us if we appear to be human, as opposed to being blobs with 9 tentacles or whatever they really look like, but it flies in the face of, they're like, lying. What is that?
Yeah, that's true. It really does, because the whole idea of changing your appearance like that to be more, it means that you understand doing something that's not real
and it's not truthful,
right? So
that just kind of is sticking in my brain a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I still love the show, and it doesn't kill it for me. It just I would love to meet the showrunners or go to a panel and be able to ask them that question and just see have they considered that, and how do they reconcile that they're so aghast at not being truthful all the time, yet clearly they're not truthful in the video game, and they admit it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the one thing watching the second time that I kind of went, I never really thought about that before. And it's just kind of running around in my empty brain case. And so, yeah, that would be, if at Fan Expo or C2E2 some point we get to meet some of these guys, that would definitely be a question that I would love to ask them.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, I like it.
Oh,
all right. Well, if there's nothing else, I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss our listener feedback we received for this episode, as well as a couple of people gave us their thoughts on the whole season as a whole, which is great. So we'll discuss that listener feedback and what's coming up next on the podcast.
So stick around. We'll be right back. But not Will. He's gone.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally going to get in. You better get ready for it.
No! Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head.
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. Join hosts Diana and Steve as they recap and discuss the best of horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and apocalyptic entertainment. Aim for the Head, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Find us on Instagram and Blue Sky.
Hi, this is Tom Savini, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
Hey there, everybody. We are back. We're going to jump right into our listener feedback that we got for episode 8, finale for season 1 of Three Body Problem. So first up on the feedback, we got via the Facebook, our number 1 listener, Erica Price. Erica, thank you for writing in. Erica wrote to us and says, season finale. Still not many details regarding season 2, though. I really was hoping it would come out this year, but it looks like we'll be waiting until 2026. Probably so. Clarence's dry humor cracks me up. Amen to that. Good thing the shooter wasn't aiming for Saul's head. I know, but he did have to talk about it because, I mean, you just got to talk about aiming for the head.
You got to.
Can't they make him some headgear that's bulletproof? I know time is of the essence, but couldn't they have tested this craft first? Instead, they put all their eggs in and said a prayer it would work. I'm having a hard time understanding that course of action. At least Augie's sail was a thing of beauty. Whoever is in charge of brackets is probably in the Gulf right about now. Well, it's been great chatting about Three Body Problem. Thanks for your fantastic coverage. Thank you for writing in all the time, because it's one thing to cover the podcast, it's to cover a show on the podcast and talk about what we think about stuff, but hearing what you guys think about stuff is always really important to us. And so thank you so much, Erica. You've always been someone who wrote in a lot with all of the stuff that we cover, but it was really great to always look forward to your feedback every week. So we appreciate that. So
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming along with us while we did this coverage. So we appreciate it.
Erica, it's amazing. I look forward to getting your feedback every week. It was great. You know, and just what you wrote here, you know, like the headgear for the vest. Yeah, that was something you think that they would have included. And think? In term, yeah, you think, right? I mean, because again, maybe people are going to aim for the head.
Yeah.
But then your second point about, you know, why didn't they have time to research? And I think we kind of talked about that a little bit, and that Wade just has no time. Right. And
yeah, it's all the push forward thing.
Yeah. He's like, we want to get there as soon as possible. Because like we said, that one scientist woman that's in that initial meeting is like, why can't we take a couple decades and research and develop this so it'll work properly? And he's like, no, we're going on Tuesday. So get ready.
Yeah. And keep in mind, too, that if you remove Will from the equation, this was originally going to be, I can't remember his name, but it was going to be the chimpanzee. And then they discovered that in order to do this the most efficient method, they couldn't, he was too heavy. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if we'll see, like, you know, 2.0, version 2.0 of the thing will have a chimpanzee in it the next time. So I'm curious. But yeah, I think a lot of our you know, disappointment over it too is because there was such a personal payload, as it were, you know. Yes. So you know, if that was I would feel really sad. I mean, I'm an animal lover, so, you know, I would be very sad about the chimpanzee, but we had such a connection with Will and his sacrifice. Even though he was dying, it was still a selfless thing to do, and it didn't come to fruition. So I think that adds a lot of other layers to the, you know, the anger and the disappointment over you know, the probe not working. So, yeah. So try to imagine it as just a chimpanzee.
There you go.
As it were.
A throwing up chimpanzee.
Yeah. Can't hold his bananas, as it were.
A chimpanzee that looks like he's going to like start eating your face, but he's actually just going to throw up. That's what you have to think of.
That's his get sick face, not his tear your face off face.
He's not a rage monkey from 28 Days Later yet.
Yeah, just give him time though. Put him asleep long enough, and we'll see how that goes.
That's right.
season 2, perhaps. Anyway, thanks again, Erica, for writing in. Well, we love your perspective and your humor. So we look forward to hearing from you. Hopefully you're going to be watching Last of Us, I hope. So we'll chat with you some more in the future, I'm sure. So thanks again, Erica.
Thank you for taking the journey with us. It was awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So moving along, we got our feedback from our number 2 fan. And this is via the blackmail because Diana has been extorting these responses. This is from our pal Joe Griffin, our humble narrator and announcer voice that you hear at the beginning of every podcast. He sent this in via the Facebook Messenger. And again, very, very stream of consciousness style is how Joe did this. He just kind of put down a bunch of thoughts. So he starts out by saying, Saul doesn't care about the future because he won't have kids. Saul doesn't care about future generations if they don't carry his DNA. Saul doesn't care about what happens to other people if it's not happening to him. Saul thinks like a Republican. Don't be like Saul. So that's how he starts. His next one is, what happened to Nora is not a ringing endorsement for self-driving cars. Which is correct. Although you have to admit,
wrong.
They did do what they were programmed to do. So you could look at it as it was like a, what did you say? It was a successful failure.
Yes.
Yeah. Then he goes on to say, Elon wants self-driving cars. Don't be like Elon. His next point is, I get that the big black airplane looks cool at an angle on the runway, but they had to taxi it out there, turn it, then they have to turn it again to take off. Cool composition is worth the extra effort when time's a wasting, I guess. And yeah, it did strike me as a little weird too, Joe, that it's like, why is it at an angle? Because it was. But they really wanted that image, like you pointed out, Dee, of like all the soldiers in a circle, like watching it, protecting it, whatever. And obviously they felt having it a little kittywampus from the runway or the road there was a cooler looking shot. And the next point, I think, ties into something Erica just said, which is Saul's bulletproof tracksuit has no hood or helmet. What if Santi agents ... aim for the head?
I see what you did there. Look at him trying to get into our good graces.
I know. It's almost like he's going to see us this weekend, maybe.
I know.
He goes on to say, it is going to be great. He goes, I suppose meeting you was a terrible accident. That's what Nora, I believe, said to Saul at the beginning. Yep. Many of my ex-type people, all of whom are, so far as I know, still alive, would say something similar. Don't be like Saul or Joe. And you're being too hard on yourself, Joe, because it was only just 1 or 2 people. Anyway, he goes, his next point is, you don't know anyone with more authority. And that's what Wade says to Jin when she wants to get the seeds on and he says no, and she's like, well, I'll go find someone with more authority, and he goes, you don't know anyone with any more authority. It's a cute line, but shouldn't Jin know this already? The writer's room should know this. Don't be like the writer's room. And yes, it is. I agree. It's strange that at this point in her working relationship with Wade, she is still unclear that there's a higher person than him. Really? No, he's the boss. But anyway, he goes on to say, the Wallfacers project builds on the legacy of Mike from the end of the Blair Witch Project, which, if you remember that movie, Mike is the guy who we see facing in the corner of the room at the very, very end, right? That's a very scary image. He goes, no one knew why he was facing that wall, and no one asked him to explain. And that's kind of the Wallfacers thing, right? They're supposedly working on stuff, but they don't ever have to divulge what it is. It's all up in their
very
heads.
Secretive, yeah.
Yes. And then he goes on to say, the Wallfacers from Three Body Problem should team up with the Ghostfacers from Supernatural. I see what you did there. He goes, Saul has a line, thanks for the heads up, Brandon. If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. Saul is letting the side down. Don't be like Saul. And that kind of ties in something you were saying, that, Saul was just really not not stepping up in the moment there for a while.
Right. Yeah.
He said, next thing he says is, Jin gets on the black plane and delivers a Dear John walk by. Cold, he says. Later, Raj decides that cornering Jin into talking about their relationship rather than focusing on the mission, which is clearly where her head is at, is the vitally important thing to do. Raj is a jagoff. Don't be like Raj. And you know, I kind of disagree. You know, at that point, when you're heading to the launch of the mission's already pretty much ready to go.
Yep.
You know, there's not a lot that Jin's going to be able to like crunch on her little MacBook there and go, oh my God, we have to change that. No, I mean, it's all there. It's all built. It's all ready to go. So I kind of side with Team Raj on this one when he goes, you know what, we're on a plane for 5 hours. This is the time to talk about this. So little disagreement there with you, Joe, but it's still funny. The next point, he goes, I'm sorry, I didn't aim for the head. Exactly. Body shots just don't work. Sniper, you failed, Sniper. Don't be like Sniper. And that you failed, Sniper, you failed, Sniper. That is a line that John Lennon says in the movie Help, which Joe and I will constantly say to each other. And just insert the new occupation when somebody does something that doesn't, you know, it's not working correctly. We're like, you know, waitress, you failed, waitress, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So that's just him being funny with that. Spoiler: Saul and Tyler Durden are the same person. Oh. He goes, Tatiana carried a loaded gun into Tesco to buy groceries. Which is true. She had it on her, so she must have. Tatiana is a lunatic. Don't be like Tatiana.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. Don't be like her. She's a true believer, crazy nut job. Yep. Tatiana Haas has her own visor now. And then he does in parentheses the rim shot. Yeah. And we did find out her last name is Haas because it said that on the top of the box. So
yes, it did.
Next, he goes, shout out to the VFX team for painting out the camera reflections in the visors throughout the show. VFX teams are awesome. Be like VFX teams.
Yes.
And that's true. We did not see one boom mic or camera or light stand in any of the reflections the whole time. So good job.
Yes.
Newton's first law of motion states that an object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. In the vacuum of space, Will is going to keep going forever until he runs into something, and yes. I hope he's not conscious.
I hope so too.
Yes.
Oh my God.
You have to hope that he's like in suspended animation and he's almost like asleep. Like from when he like died in the hospital to whenever if he gets revived, it'll be like instantaneous to him. Just a split second. And whereas, actually 10,000 years passed or whatever. But yeah, if he's conscious, oh my God, you would go crazy. He would go crazy. This next point I really like, and I didn't think about that at the time, but I think it's really a very interesting idea. And he goes, if the Santi can implant visions into people's heads, like the countdowns or the video game people, or bloody visions of future horribleness, like Wade seeing his, eyeballless, face. Joe asked the question, why is Wade, and I think the UN, so sure that the Santi can't read minds? That's a really interesting point, don't you think?
Yes. I didn't think about that. Damn it.
Yeah, I didn't either. And, clearly if they can get in there and project that image on your retinas, maybe they can. Excuse me, I got the coughs right now. Oh. His last point is, despite being told not to give a Henry V speech from one of the three people in the world whose directions must be followed without question, Clarence drives Team Mope into the Everglades and gives a Henry V speech. And it's meant to be inspirational. Excuse me. But despite both Jin and Saul being smart enough to poke holes in the aspect of the bug, and I'm using air quotes metaphor, they are nonetheless inspired. And since it was in the middle of the night when they were at the hotel pool and dawn when they get to Cicada Central, they apparently drove hours for that speech. And now they have to drive hours back because they've, and again I'm using air quotes, got work to do. Clarence wastes valuable time and energy on theatrics. Don't be like Clarence.
Well, now we know how Joe feels about that scene.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, amazing feedback, really, again, very stream of consciousness and a lot of thoughts. So thank you, Mr. Griffin. And unlike the sniper, Mr. Griffin, you did not fail, Mr. Griffin.
The best part is that we'll be able to see him this weekend and give him crap for giving us the longest feedback known to man.
Oh, it was almost 2 pages of this thing.
Pages, people. It brought on a coughing fit from you.
It really did. I know. And you notice now that we're done, not coughing.
Right. It's just he cursed you.
He did.
He gave you the curse. Yeah. The curse of the cough. Well, regardless, thank you, Joe, for writing in.
Oh, it's amazing.
Faithfully each week after making us making us cover this show.
Mm-hmm. Well, and faithful in that he didn't want any of the photos released by you, so hopefully the envelopes will stop arriving at his house. That he wanted to ask that.
It's a big improvement. He made us cover Kingdom and then never sent in a lick of feedback. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to say that he and his brother Tim sent in feedback for the first episode maybe, but then it dried up.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Tim kept giving feedback, but he was.
Yeah. Anyway,
we kid because we love.
That's true. That's true. Theoretically.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, moving on. So our next piece of feedback is a great thing because it's a milestone. It's someone who's written in for their first time.
I know, it's so cool.
I know. I love first time feedback. It's one of my favorite things. So this is from our listener, Christopher Anderson. Hello, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
I'm sure he gets that all the time. And he wrote into us via the Facebook, and he put first time, long time. Love it. Totally know what he's saying.
Yep.
And he continues and says, I loved your coverage of this series, one of my favorite shows of 2024. Steve's, air quotes, overalls commentary has been exquisite.
Yeah.
See, look what we did there, Christopher. You just made him have a big head.
Wait. I'm having a moment here. Let's just revel in it for just a second longer. Oh yeah. This is it. Okay. I like to think that he's referring to the fact that I didn't ruin too much for you during the run of the show, but
probably
the overalls commentary, and I was thinking about this. I don't know if we ever technically explained the overalls idea, but before we were recording one day, we were talking, and you were fixing a room in your house with new drywall and stuff, and somehow you mentioned you were wearing overalls, and then I don't even remember how we got there, but somehow we got onto safe words or something.
Yes.
And then it became, and I just picked overalls because we had just mentioned it or something. And so when we started the show, then it was what the idea was. Whenever you would be like, I wonder what's going to happen next, I would say overalls because it's my safe word of this is getting too intense. I can't go any further. But I don't know if we ever said that, but that's what that meant. And it was just a fun thing, and we ran with it the whole time. I thought it was it's going to be part of our conversation for the rest of our lives, pretty much. So.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's what that means, and I'm hoping that's what Christopher, that's what you're saying, is that I didn't ruin too much for Diana, who was experiencing this for the first time. If so, thank you, because it was very hard. I got to tell you, it was very difficult to not be like, guess what's going to happen? Because so
I can't wait to tell you about what's going to happen.
Yes. So anyway, continue, because he left a little more.
He did. He continues and says, regarding episode 7, the Einstein joke that Wang Ji tells to Saul, he says, the Einstein joke is the key. Interesting.
Okay.
So what he's saying
is
that
means, but okay.
Season 2 is going to be filled with a bunch of stand-up comedians that are telling everybody how to fight off the alien invaders.
That's the plan that Saul's going to come up with, is that we develop the most lethal comedy.
Yep.
And when they get here, we'll just slay them with these amazing HBO stand-up specials. I like it.
Nice. I like it. I do too. He continues and says, if you were a Wallfacer, what would your plan be? God, I don't know. My plan would be to sit by the beach and like Steve said, don't bother me, I'm working, and tap your head a little bit. And
Yeah. I would definitely be on like Team Saul and like say, okay, for me to really be working top notch, I'm going to need 25-year-old scotch, a massive bag of weed. And if you could like run over, 2 or 3 co-eds every couple of days, that will make me really think of good stuff.
yes. Oh my God. Okay, he continues and says, I can't wait until season 2 comes. Rumor has it that they will begin filming soon. Yes, that is the rumor. So that's fantastic.
Yep.
He continues and wrapped it up by saying, thanks again for all of your efforts. It is truly appreciated. And thank you, Christopher. That's very nice to hear. And I'm really glad that, we just happened to pick a show that you really, really enjoyed from last year. And it prompted you to be able to write in. So that's fantastic to me. That's exactly what we're always looking for, is that connection with people that are listening on a regular basis to the podcast. So thank you so much for writing in. We truly appreciate it. And we truly appreciate the kind words about our coverage. It was our pleasure.
Yeah. I am always amazed whenever anyone is moved enough by something that I have said that they are going to like send in what their take is on it, or their thoughts on it. That is just, it's always mind blowing. But like you have always said, that this is a dialogue. It's not us just pontificating, although,
we do that plenty.
But it's we want everybody that's listening to let us know. Do you agree? Do you not agree? What is your take? Because that's the cool thing about art, is that everybody has a different view on it, and that's where I think it's the most fun, when we get a bunch of viewpoints and not just what I think or what Diana thinks. So
and Steve and I have disagreed on stuff for sure, like episodes in the past of other things we've covered. I think of famously, like, we've liked episodes that Andy from Germany has hated, and other way around, like we, or movies that we mention, I loved that movie, and I couldn't stand it. Like that's the best part about art, is that it is all meant to affect us all in a different way, and take it in how it appears to you. So and like Steve was saying, we love when this becomes a conversation and it's shared. So people writing in and sharing their thoughts, even if it's just a one-liner, even if it's I love this episode, or I hated this episode, or whatever. Just the feedback alone, hearing from other people on what they think about things, it's great. Thank you, Christopher. That was the highlight of our week, to get a nice note from someone who hadn't written in before. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And Christopher, hopefully you will, continue forward with, we got Last of Us season 2 coming up, and if you have any thoughts on that, and that's going to be, everyone's experiencing it for the first time as it's happening, right?
Yes.
And so definitely a lot of what do you think's going to happen are going to be available. So if you want to contribute, we absolutely, send us an email, send us a note, whatever. We love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Christopher. You made our weeks for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on, what is coming up next on the podcast? We are going to be covering Last of Us. We did discuss that. That's going to premiere. We've got 2 more weeks until Last of Us is back up and running, and we'll get to that. But first, we want to talk about what we're going to cover next week.
Mm-hmm.
So next week, we're inspired by the fact that we actually just saw this movie, and we realized we'd never talked about it on the podcast, and it's really a great futuristic / apocalypse style film. So, folks, we're going to talk classic Escape from New York next week.
Escape from New York.
And I can't wait to chat about this. It's such a classic. There's great drama, there's cheesy action, there's fantastic scenes, there's 80s at its finest.
You got Isaac Hayes in this movie.
Oh my
He's
God.
great. Yeah.
So good. So good. So we are super excited to chat about it. So we're going to chat about Escape from New York next week. And first off, before I get into more things, it is on Prime right now, but it's leaving soon. I checked last night or the night before, and it only had 7 days left. So less than a week left, and it's leaving Prime. So, and I don't know where it's going to move next. So if you're looking to see it cheaply or for free, I know Prime, if you don't actually have Prime, it's usually only just a couple of dollars to rent something. And if you do have Prime, it's free. So
Yep,
go check out that sucker.
Absolutely. And you're right. It'll move somewhere. It'll go to Pluto or Tubi or maybe even like Max or one of the premium channels. But yeah, it will pop up again. But right now, I think most people have Prime more for the shipping than necessarily the TV. But you most likely you have it. So if you want to refresh yourself with the movie, or if you've never seen it before,
which is fantastic, you got to see it.
Yeah. And just to give you the quick setup, if you're just never heard of it, it's supposed to be in the future in 1997. It was made in 1980, so they thought that was the future. And the Manhattan Island, New York City, has become a maximum security prison for the whole country, and there are no guards in there. Instead, they've built a big wall surrounding it. They've mined the waterways and the bridges, and the police, the guards, are encamped around the wall, like making sure no one gets out. And the idea is once they put you in there, you never come out. There's no parole. There's no, you served your time. And the president's plane, Air Force One, is hijacked and it crashes in the city. And the president ejects and is alive, but he's been captured by these prisoners that are in there. And so the police send in Snake Plissken, the ultimate anti-hero, to retrieve the president in 24 hours. That's the setup of the movie. And it's John Carpenter. It's Kurt Russell in one of his first serious starring movie roles.
Yep.
He was like the Disney actor for a long time, a child actor in the 60s and stuff. So this was one of his first, serious movies, if you want to call it that. And it's John Carpenter when he was just coming into his own. And it's a super fun movie in all the cool, cheesy ways, like you said. So I'm very excited to talk about it. And again, because we just got a chance to see it on the big screen last week anyway, it's just very fresh in our mind. So it's going to be great. I'm super stoked.
Yeah, we are super excited to chat about it. So that's coming up next week on the podcast. And like I said, it's on Prime right now. So get on it, folks. If you need a refresher or if you need to watch it for the first time, no shame in your game. Go watch it. You'll love it. Days of the Dead this coming weekend at the Crowne Plaza in Rosemont, Illinois. This is a great convention. We have talked about it many times before. We have attended many times before. This one, recently, the last couple of years, they've really been branching out into other cities. So you may have seen them in Atlanta, Indianapolis, Las Vegas, I think Houston. Have they
There's
been
one
Houston?
in Houston.
Houston, yeah.
They're I think they've done one in Phoenix before.
Sure.
So yeah, they are kind of growing, and it's a real fun show, and they usually will have some music people. Sometimes they'll have some wrestling people, so they're trying to bring in other fan groups besides just the horror people. But it's going to be really a cool show. Some interesting guests, and we're going to be there definitely on Saturday. Both of us will be there. So if you're in the area, tickets are not that expensive. A one-day ticket, I think, is like $30 or $40. And
and it's cheaper in advance. I think they jump up about at least 10 to anywhere between $10 to $20, depending on the day. Obviously, Fridays and Sundays are always like a little bit slower for conventions, and Saturdays more the prime time. And they just put out the schedule of events too. So they always do really good Q&A sessions, and Saturday is just going to be jam-packed They've got a Revenge of the Nerds reunion happening there, which that's going to be a lot of fun. What's the other one? I can't think of right now.
There's a bunch of Terrifier
people. Yep.
And then there's several people from Friday the 13th Part 5. So they're going to do a panel. And then one of the guys I'm really excited about is Ty West is going to be there.
Yes.
And he, of course, is the director of X and Pearl and Maxine. And, he's big with A24 and one of the hotter directors going right now. And I believe there's also 2 of the guys from Predator, from the Schwarzenegger movie from the 80s. They're going to be there. And so they're doing a panel as well. So, yeah, a lot of interesting folks. I think like Mimi Rogers is going to be there. So if you always wanted to ask her, what Tom Cruise was really like, here's your chance.
Here's your shot. Shoot your shot, people.
Yeah, it's super fun because most of those guest people are very nice and gracious and accommodating. And then you have all the vendors, and that's always fun to kind of walk around and see all the wares. And you found your amazing bag at one of these shows. With the shining pattern on it, and so and that's one thing I've noticed is that over the years it's kind of developed more into like there's a lot of people that are making their own stuff and bringing it to sell. I mean, don't get me wrong, there'll be plenty of T-shirts and things that are trademarked and copyrighted and so on, but there's also a lot of original, in many cases, one-of-a-kind kind of things that people have made up that they have for sale. And it's always fun to walk around and look at that stuff and talk to the people about, why did you make this crazy thing, and so on. So, yeah, it's a great day all the way around, and without a doubt. It's really fun.
Yeah. So we always have a really great time. They've got good programming. We're good friends with Summer, who is she's the podcaster from the Dolls of Horror, and she moderates the panels at Days of the Dead. She's the ace in the hole for all of their shows. So we look forward to seeing Summer and chatting with her, and she's gonna be leading these Q&A sessions. She always does such a great job. The folks from the movies and the talent, as it were, they all really love her. She does such a great job, and she's such a great advocate. She's always she promotes the hell out of that show as well.
Oh God,
so
yes, she does.
Always promoting and pushing stuff through her own feed for her podcast. So we're looking forward to that. That's always a fun time. We always have our traditional go out to dinner on Saturday night.
We do.
So we're looking forward to that too. But yeah, if you in the area and you want to check out this convention, Steve and I will definitely be there on Saturday. You will be easy to find. We'll be in the black horror t-shirts. It's easy to spot. You could see us from across the room for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Without question.
I'll be carrying the poster tube, and Diana will have the horror-themed purse backpack thing.
Yeah.
And we probably be wearing some sort of genre T-shirt. So yeah, very easy to spot. Absolutely.
Super easy to spot. Yeah, just come into the room and just yell out like, Diana and Steve, and about 30 people will go, what? Anyway. But either way, I hope to see you there if you're in the area. We will definitely next week on the podcast, we'll talk a little bit about the fun times that we had. And also we mentioned it already, 2 weeks until The Last of Us is back. A little bit more than 2 weeks, actually. I'm sorry. We are actually, and we discovered this last time for Last of Us, they don't release the show until Sunday night, and they don't release it on their app until almost exactly the same time, if memory serves.
Yeah.
So to counteract that, so that we can we really like to have the time to be able to watch the show twice if possible. So we make sure that we're seeing everything and noting all the little moments here and there. So we can watch it once as a fan and watch it once as a podcaster. So we're going to record on Tuesdays during the run of Last of Us. So just know that, it is going to show on Sunday night, but you got an extra day to get your feedback in. But don't worry, we'll bother you enough on the social media to make sure that you send us your feedback about the show. So,
oh yeah.
So that premieres on the Sunday, the 13th. And I think is that correct? Yes. So we'll be podcasting on that starting on the 15th.
Yes.
So
tax day.
yeah. Not that I'm done with that anyway. So, but yes, tax day. Yes. For all others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it. We got anything else we got to chat about before we wrap this up for people?
No, I think that pretty much does it. We're kind of finally getting out of hopefully the last vestiges of winter. We've got Last of Us, then we have Dead City.
Yep.
So lots of stuff coming up, and then you and I have picked out a few other movies that we're going to cover when those things are done. And obviously, if anyone has any suggestions, any apocalypse or horror movies that you would love us to talk about, let us know. Or if there's a series out there. I know one thing that I've started to watch that I really like, that I was turned on to, is a show on Netflix called Bodies that I think would be fun to talk about, but you have not watched it yet. So we're not really certain for sure once we get past Dead City what's coming. But, I think, again, any suggestions or options that you would like to hear out there from you guys, let us know.
Yeah, and we have until there is going to be a little bit of overlap, which we're dealing with it, people. And then Dead City itself, I think we're going to run into a little bit of June. So we do have some time. But, as always, if there's something you're watching right now, there's a lot of buzz about a handful of shows happening right now on pretty much all over the place. I keep hearing about this show, that show, whatever. So send us a suggestion. Send us a thought on something you want us to watch. And it could be new. Could be something that's been out for a year or so. Look at this. We covered Three Body Problem almost a year ahead of when it came out. So time limits mean nothing to us.
That's right. You want us to go cover season 1 of the X-Files? Yeah, we'll think about it.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us this week, folks. Thanks again for listening in. We look forward to chatting with you again next week. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, they no work. Just ask the sniper.
To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTHpodcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
Matt Damon, what a dick.
There we go. We just nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, what else is there to say?